Three spine-chilling true stories of being watched. Sinister secrets revealed in the darkness, each heartbeat thudded against Sarah's ribcage, echoing in the silence that filled her tiny Ohio diner. The moonlight streamed through the grimy windows, casting long shadows, raising every hair on her neck. She was used to hairpin turns in life, but never did she expect to feel a voyeuristic presence skulk outside her window. The blinds from Mr. Hargrove's house were always slightly parted, like a gaping mouth whispering secrets. The silhouette of a lurking figure stood behind them, his eyes fixed on her, as if he could peel back her layers with just a stare. Everything about him screamed danger, his hollow gaze, the way he watched with a predator's hunger. At night, as shadows danced, a chilling unease wrapped tight around Sarah's chest. Like clockwork, the streetlight would flicker, almost in rhythm with whispering shadows slinking away. What were they hiding? The community was silent. It had been forever since anyone spoke about paranoia and fear here. But now, they haunted her thoughts. After another grueling shift, fatigue spread over her like a shroud as she returned home. She found Jake planted in front of his computer, lost in a side of life she didn't understand. His online friends buzzed like angry bees, new connections that rolled off his tongue, but left her spiraling with worry. "Hey, Mom," he chirped, eyes lit up with excitement. "Check out my friend. He just moved to the area." But something felt deeply wrong. Each detail about this new connection mirrored elements of their own lives so closely that a chill raced up her spine. She stewed in a pot of anxiety as anger mixed with instinct drove her to investigate. A gnawing feeling needled her thoughts, getting under her skin like a splinter might. After a day spent unraveling clues, she discovered it, the hidden camera tucked behind the frame of a photo. Panic crashed through her like a tidal wave. Who had been watching them? "Mom, stop," Jake had interjected when she tried to explain. The police brushed her off, blamed it on stress, and that only filled her chest with heavier dread. "You're just tired," the officer said, but she felt like a rag doll, frayed and discarded. Checking behind the curtains became a ritual every night, eyes scanning the dark expanse of the neighborhood. Each creak of their old house drummed louder in her ears, drowning her hope. Wasn't she supposed to protect her son? Then, that night, she confronted Mr. Hargrove. The moon hung heavy in the sky, mocking her as she walked to his fortress of a home. His presence stood solid behind the curtain, a shadow among shadows. Their conversation, uneasy, crackled like a down power line. Stories of children lost in the dark, he murmured, a warning masked as a tale. Her stomach twisted. The notion of her son falling into a trap fueled her fear. Before she could act, a vibration jolted her. "I see you," flashed from an unknown number, cold and electrifying, sharpening the edges of her panic. Could she shield Jake from this predator lurking further in the shadows? With her spirit crushed, she sensed she was cornered, alive but teetering beyond the edge of sanity. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Time trickled like molasses as the shadows pulled closer, the line between watcher and watched blurred to nothingness. With the absence of authority, where could she turn? Echoes of her fading heartbeat filled the night, pushing her to the precipice. Who or what truly watched them in the darkness? Every shadow held new threats, and Sarah struggled against the shadows now creeping into her heart. The question hung like a noose. Could she save Jake before it was too late? A suffocating silence draped over Sarah as she stepped back into her home. The dim light of the living room flickered, throwing her reflection against the walls like a ghost. Each corner felt like a gaze, every shadow a whisper. She clutched her phone, the taunting message lingering like a knife at her throat. "I see you." Would this be the night the darkness swallowed her whole? Jake was in the kitchen, oblivious, rummaging through the fridge. The sound of cans clattering against each other felt jarring against the backdrop of her swirling thoughts. He paused, glancing up. "Everything okay, Mom?" His innocent question sent a fresh wave of turmoil through her gut. She forced herself to smile, praying it masked her fear. Yeah, just tired, she lied, her voice cracking like frost under pressure. But the truth clawed at her. She couldn't let him think she was unraveling, not when the shadows whispered secrets she wasn't ready to face. The unease seeped into the corners of her mind as she paced away from him, heartbeat quickening. Her eyes darted to the window, and she caught a glimpse of movement next door. Mr. Hargrove stood at the boundary of his yard, his features lost under the veil of night. He was watching again. A flicker of panic rippled through her, but it settled into steely determination. This time, she would confront him. "Jake, stay here," she said, though her voice felt leaden. She slipped outside, stepping into the cool air. It nipped at her skin, tightening around her like a vice as she ventured toward the tall fence dividing their properties. The crunch of gravel underfoot felt deafening, each step echoing with intention. As she neared, Mr. Hargrove straightened from where he was crouched, a twisted smile curling across his face. "Evening, Sarah," he greeted, his voice smooth yet rusty like a door creaking open. There was a darkness behind those words, a thickness that made her stomach churn. "What do you want?" she demanded, pulling herself taller. She was tired of being meek, tired of living in fear. "Oh, nothing much," he trailed off, his gaze flicking towards her home, lingering far too long on the window where Jake stood oblivious, unaware of the predator lurking in the dark. "Just observing. I told you stories there's a reason they're passed on." A shudder ran through her. What kind of stories? What line did he think he was crossing? "You need to stop. You're making me uncomfortable." "Comfortable?" He laughed, an unsettling sound that vibrated in her bones. "It's too late for that, don't you think?" In that moment, something shifted. The shadows around them felt heavier, darker. She turned, shaking, fear igniting her instincts. She had to get back to Jake, to protect him from whatever Mr. Hargrove was brewing in that sinister mind. Just as she took a step back, a sudden crash shattered the silence. Sarah whipped around, her heart racing with panic. The sound came from her house. "Jake!" she screamed, racing back to the door. Each hurried step felt heavier, dread wrapping around her limbs like a vice. The door burst open, revealing her son standing frozen, eyes wide, face the color of death. "He is here," Jake shouted, pointing behind her with trembling fingers. "I saw him." Sarah spun back, terror swallowing her whole. Mr. Hargrove was gone, but the shadows remained, thick and swirling, as if alive, ready to trap them both. Was this just the beginning of their nightmare? She clutched Jake's hand, fear tightening her grip. "What do we do now?" she whispered, the weight of their reality crashing in. Before she could breathe, the phone buzzed again in her pocket. She fished it out, eyes scanning the unknown number flashing on the screen. Another message? "You can't hide from me." Her pulse quickened, the reality crashing down like a wave. Who was really watching? And just how close was danger now? The basement door creaked open, and a cold draft shot up the stairs. Sarah turned sharply, jerking her hand away from Jake's. The shadows in the hallway loomed over them, stretching like fingers trying to grip their very souls. She glanced back at her son, searching for a spark of bravery in his wide eyes. "Stay here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, the fear coiled tightly in her throat. But as she took a step towards the darkness of the basement, she felt the weight of his gaze on her back. "Please, don't go down there," Jake pleaded, his voice trembling. He could be hiding. She forced down the flutter of panic in her chest. "I need to check. We can't just suddenly." The house groaned as if it were alive, settling into a suffocating stillness. She felt the sharp bite of dread clawing at her, as if the very structure of her home was a spectator to her nightmares. With great reluctance, she peered down the shadowed stairs, and a chill raced through her when she thought she heard something moving beneath. It was soft, almost like whispers, but it made her skin crawl. "Stay right here, Jake," she commanded again. She took another step, this time not waiting for his reply. She was driven by instinct, propelled by survival, eager to confront whatever was lurking in the dark. The basement was an abyss, the darkness absorbing the faint glow of her phone flashlight. The beams danced across the walls, illuminating boxes of forgotten memories and discarded hopes. She stepped down further, each creaky wooden step urging her to turn back, but she pressed on. In the far corner, shadows shifted. She squinted, heart pounding. "Hello?" Her voice echoed back, mocking her as the silence returned like an old friend. Then, a breath. A soft, almost reverent inhalation that held a secret. The hairs on the back of her neck stood at attention. With her heart racing, she edged closer. A figure slumped against the wall, obscured in darkness. "Jake?" she called, panic flaring. What if it was him? Had he followed her down, against her wishes? But the voice that answered was ragged and low, slithering out from the shadows like a serpent. "I always knew you'd come." The air turned electric, thickening as she recognized the voice. It was Mr. Hargrove. He was here, in her house, hiding in her basement. No, get away from him. She felt a surge of adrenaline as she reached for the nearest object, a broken chair leg. A laugh echoed around her. It was piercing and dark, slicing through her resolve. "You think you can protect him? You're too late. The stories, they have to be told. Get out," Sarah shouted, trembling with rage and fear. She brandished the chair leg, unsure if she was more inclined to fight or flee. But he remained unfazed, his silhouette blending with the shadows. "You can't escape what's meant to happen," he whispered, his grin glowing odd in the dim light. "You're just prolonging the inevitable." In that moment, it all clicked. She understood the stories were not just tales. They were lives tethering to her reality, binding her in a web of doom. Jake's feet shuffled noisily behind her, and she shot out a warning. "Stay back, Mom," he cried, panic fueling his voice. A crash echoed from the other side of the room, where more boxes toppled. "Run," Sarah shouted, her body surging forward, fueled by desperation. She had to reach him. She had to save them both. As she lunged towards Jake, the cold, clammy hand of Mr. Hargrove shot out from the shadows, grabbing her wrist with a grip like iron. "Didn't you hear?" he rasped, pulling her closer. "It's too late for you both," and suddenly, everything went dark. The last thing she felt was the paralyzing cold that wrapped around her like a shroud, sealing her fate. What would she sacrifice to protect her son? Did fate leave any room for escape? In the inky void, her instinct screamed. It was far from over. But as silence engulfed them, a new message buzzed in Sarah's pocket, slicing through the blackness. "I'm coming for you." The terror was far from over. What awaited them in the shadows that deepened even further? The darkness was suffocating. It wrapped around Sarah like a living thing, heavy and oppressive. Panic clawed its way through her chest, but all she could hear was the hollow echo of her own breaths. The grip on her wrist tightened, pulling her deeper into the abyss. "Let her go?" Jake's voice pierced through the shadows, a desperate plea that sent shockwaves through her body. It sparked something within her, a flicker of hope that ignited against the encroaching dread. "Jake!" she shouted, straining against the grasp that held her bound. Her heart raced, a frantic drumbeat urging her to fight. Mr. Hargrove's laugh curled around her like smoke. "No one is coming to save you, Sarah. The stories are alive. They feed on fear, on the darkness in hearts like yours." The tightness in Sarah's chest surged. "You don't have to do this," she yelled, not just at him, but at fate itself. She twisted her wrist, desperate to break free, adrenaline empowering her. Suddenly, she felt a shift in the grip. It faltered. She leaped forward, breaking free. But as she turned, the darkness coiled tighter around her. The basement seemed to expand and contract, the shadows whispering secrets she couldn't understand. Jake's frightened face emerged from the murk. "Mom." He rushed toward her, eyes wide with terror. "We should go now." But then, from the depths, came a hissing sound. "You cannot escape what's already been written," Mr. Hargrove's voice hissed, the shadows swirling around him like a dark shroud. Without thinking, she grabbed Jake's hand, her grip fierce. "We need to find a way out." They stumbled back, trying to melt into the light above, but the basement felt alive, its walls pushing back, constricting, the air thick with unseen threats. They scrambled backward, the steps creaking ominously beneath them. But just as they turned to flee, the lights flickered. The basement whirlpooled into chaos, shadows erupting in all directions like creatures unleashed. "Follow me," Sarah shouted, adrenaline coursing through her veins. They dashed toward the staircase, and she felt Jake's small hand squeezing tighter than ever. From below the cacophony, she barely heard Mr. Hargrove's murmuring rise above the din, dark and sinister. "You can't escape, Sarah. The stories are older than you can imagine. They intend to bind you at that moment. The walls began to shift, a dark pulse sending shudders through the floor. Boxes tumbled, scattering memories into the gloom. She was losing the path, losing her way. "Mom, what do we do?" Jake whispered, terror making his voice quiver, a tremor that sent shivers racing up her spine. "Just keep going." They reached the last step, but her heart sank as she saw the basement door slam shut, sealing them in with the shadows. "No, no, no." She banged against the door, desperation slashing through her. Jake tugged at her sleeve, eyes wide, fear spilling over. Then she heard it, a low rumble, like thunder, rolling through the house. It echoed with an ominous warning and unseen force behind the door. "Mom," Jake stammered, peering over her shoulder. "Stay back," she commanded, but it was too late. A dark tendril, slick and twisting like smoke, slithered around her legs, pulling her back towards the shadows. The whispers intensified, a deafening chorus of despair and warning. Sarah struggled, letting out a primal scream. "Get off me!" But it was no use. Darkness encased her, suffocating her instincts. She fought with every ounce of strength. Just as she felt herself slipping, a blinding light burst across the room. The door groaned violently, shaking, and she heard a voice, foreign yet familiar, breaking through. "Sarah, hold on. I'm almost there." She spun, confused. Who was it? With the Shadow's grip tightening, she felt hope flicker like a dying flame. "Mom. Mom, please." Before she could grasp what was happening, a brilliant flash erupted, illuminating the basement. Shadows recoiled, and the grip released. But as the darkness began to retreat, the words echoed in her mind. "I'm coming for you," who had come to her aid? And at what cost? Would they find a way out, or were they only trading one darkness for another? The walls trembled, and the whispers rose to a deafening crescendo, promising that the reality of terror was yet to be revealed. The light spread like wildfire, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air, casting a haunting glow over the unforgiving shadows. Sarah blinked, blinded momentarily, disoriented by the shift, as if she had been reborn into a different world. "Mom," Jake shouted, and she felt his small hands pulling her. There was urgency in his grip, a fear so raw and pure that it pierced through the momentary relief. But they had no time to ponder what had just happened. The darkness pulsed, like a wounded animal ready to strike back. "Where do we go?" Jake's voice quivered. The panic in his eyes mirrored what she felt swelling within her own chest. Just follow me," she urged, her voice steadier than she felt. They darted toward the far wall, where the basement window barely held a glimmer of twilight. But as they ran, the basement groaned around them. A low rumble echoed from where Mr. Hargrove had stood. "You think the light can save you?" His voice oozed with malevolence, slithering through the cracks and crevices of the room. "You will come back, Sarah." "They always do." The shadows flickered and twisted, undulating like dark waves crashing against the shore. Sarah fought against the dread beginning to fill her lungs again. They reached the window too high, too small. She glimpsed the street beyond, the world untouched by this horror, and wished with every fiber of her being for escape. "Mom." Jake's voice was a desperate whisper, tugging her back. She turned to him, fear embedding deep into her skin. She could see the shaking in his hands, the way his eyes darted to the encroaching darkness. "Jake, listen to me." She knelt down, meeting his frightened gaze. "We have to climb on the shelves. It's our only chance to reach that window." The shelves were old, the wood splintered underfoot. As she hoisted Jake up, she felt the tiniest tremor in the air, vibrating with each heartbeat like the buildup before an explosion. "Hurry," she urged, fisting the edge of the shelf, her fingertips brushing against the cold metal of a forgotten hammer. Mr. Hargrove's laughter echoed again, a cruel reminder of their dire situation. "You are already part of the stories, Sarah. Didn't I tell you? They bind those who dare to defy them, and your son will be the next." "No." The word burst from her without thought. As Jake climbed onto her shoulders, she turned to face the spreading shadows. They crept closer, tendrils of darkness slithering towards them, almost savoring the fear that stained the air. "Mom, I'm slipping," Jake cried, and she felt him falter. Panic surged inside her like boiling water. The shadows reached out, almost intertwining around her like serpents ready to strike. "Get up. You can do it," she cried, feeling her heart pound against her ribcage. forcing her to hold on to hope as the tendrils of darkness brushed against her ankles, their cold touch sending shivers up her spine. With a last desperate push, she gripped the hammer like a lifeline and slammed it against the wood, shattering the silence. The shelves shifted, and she felt Jake's weight stabilize. Climb, baby, climb. Boiling thoughts clouded her mind. They had to survive. The darkness was alive, relentless. But with each desperate breath, she felt the pull of the abyss threatening to reclaim her. She couldn't let it take them. With one last effort, Jake scrambled through the window. He turned to her, their eyes locking for a singular moment, the world outside pulsing with fading light. Mom, please. He was scared. So scared. And then, a wave of darkness surged. The basement throbbed, a living thing that wanted to swallow her whole. She fought against it, but the shadows twisted around her legs, wrapping tighter. Go, Jake. I'll be right behind you. He hesitated, but didn't have time to argue. One last glance back, and he disappeared into the night. Alone now, she felt the edge of fear throb in her chest, gnawing at her insides. The walls closed in, and Mr. Hargrove's laughter grew louder, mingled with the whispering shadows. Your son will join you soon enough, Sarah. The stories always find you. As darkness threatened to swallow her whole, and the world outside dimmed, she forced her mind to think. There had to be a way out, a truth hidden deeper than this terror. She felt something shift deep within the dark void. Before she could process it, a deafening crash erupted behind her, a collision from the shadows that sent a shiver down her spine. Something was coming. But what? And would she be ready for it? The basement shrieked with agony, darkness seeping even thicker. She took a trembling step towards the shadows, adrenaline burning through her veins. What lay ahead might be more terrifying than she could imagine. Come for me then, she whispered, her heart pounding. I'm ready. What awaited her in the depths of despair? Would she face the truth, or was this the beginning of the end? The darkness thickened around Sarah, clinging to her like a suffocating shroud. Each breath felt heavy, laden with the weight of dread. She gripped the hammer tightly, its cold metal now a poor weapon against the dread she sensed creeping closer. The basement seemed alive, its walls pulsating with malevolent energy, feeding off her fear. Come on, she whispered, before plunging deeper into the blackness. With every shaky step, the ground felt unsteady, as if it might give way beneath her at any moment. She could hear the shadows whispering, a chorus of indistinct voices spiraling into her mind, each promising chaos, each promising destiny. Then came the sound, soft at first, like the flutter of wings. Yet it grew louder, the frantic beating echoing through the void. Was it inside her head, or something else? She forced herself to keep moving. Jake was out there, safe somewhere in the light, and she had to find a way to join him. Stay focused, she muttered to herself, trying to drown out the whispers. You can do this. Yet as she advanced, the whispers became more pronounced, swirling around her like a storm. They coiled into her ears, each word wrapping tightly around her mind. The shadows were taunting her, weaving sinister stories of those who had come before her, souls lost to the abyss. Sarah, you can't run forever, Mr. Hargrove's voice hissed from the depths. Just the sound of it sent a wave of icy fear down her spine. Come join the others, join us in the tale. This was a game to him, a twisted narrative where she was but a pawn. Suddenly, the hammer slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor, the sound reverberating through the dark like a gunshot. Panic set in. She knelt down, searching in desperate haste, fingers fumbling over the rough ground. But all she grasped was dirt and splinters. The whispers grew louder, turning into mocking laughter. Can't you see? You're trapped, just like them. Just like your son will be. The shadows pressed in tighter, coiling around her ankles, pulling her towards the floor. She cursed beneath her breath, summoning every ounce of strength she could muster. With a fierce determination, she stood and began to move, fighting against the pull, focused on the faint glow of twilight that still lingered at the window. With each step, she felt a shift in the atmosphere, as if she were being watched not by one, but by many unseen eyes lurking in the dark. Go away, she yelled, the sound breaking the eerie silence. Each word shattered the hold the darkness had on her, just enough for her to break free and push forward. But they didn't go away. The shadows churned, gathering around her, almost forming a figure. The outline became clearer until the familiar silhouette of Mr. Hargrove emerged, eyes gleaming with malice. "You think you can escape?" he sneered, stepping forward, the darkness in his wake. "You're a part of my story now, and stories don't end until they've been told." Sarah's heart thundered in her chest. She could see him more clearly now, the flashes of light revealing sharp features twisted into a cruel smile. Something deep within told her he had power here, a power she didn't understand. In a moment of instinct, she turned and ran. If she could just reach the window, just one leap towards freedom. The darkness clawed at her, grasping like the hands of the lost. She could feel cold fingers skimming her back, urging her to slow down, urging her to turn around and join them. Then she stumbled, hitting the ground painfully as shadows engulfed her. A jolt of pain shot through her body, and she let out a strangled cry. She pushed against the ground, clawing her way toward the glimmer of light. "Jake!" she screamed, her voice raw with desperation. She had to keep fighting. She had to reach him. As she dragged her body forward, a chilling laughter echoed through the basement, growing louder and more menacing. "You'll never reach him, Sarah, you're too late." But was she? There had to be a way out if only she could find it before the darkness swallowed her whole. With one last surge of will, she hurled herself forward, reaching for the void where light kissed the edges of despair. Was this her moment of salvation, or merely the beginning of a far darker descent? Only time would tell. Sarah's body hit the hard floor, jolting her back into focus. The shadow swirled around her like a storm cloud, a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. Like she could see it now, dancing tantalizingly close. Get up, she yelled at herself, forcing her stiff limbs to respond. But the shadows gripped her tighter, tendrils snaking around her legs, dragging her backward. Panic surged, hot and wild, through her veins. She pulled against the constricting darkness, sweat beading on her forehead as she gritted her teeth, determined to fight. "Your son will never be safe from this, Sarah," Mr. Hargrove's voice echoed, foreboding and smooth like the surface of a still lake before a storm. "You see, all stories have their heroes." He leaned closer, his breath cold against her ear, and their tragic ends. With a newfound fury, she clawed at the floor, using her hands to drag herself forward inch by inch. Each movement cost her dearly, but she refused to let him win. The flickering light beckoned, its warmth promising a life untouched by despair. "Jake, hold on, I'm coming," she gasped, straining against the pull of the shadows. The voices morphed into a cacophony, a chaotic orchestra of despair that threatened to drown her out. Something shifted in her, an echo of strength. Gritting her teeth, she forced her trembling arms to push harder. The darkness emitted a hiss of annoyance as if her defiance stung. The oppressive grip began to weaken, loosening just enough for her to scramble forward. The glimmer of light exploded in her vision, igniting hope. But what awaited her beyond the darkness? What horrors lay in wait in the safety of the outside world? "Come to us, Sarah," the whispers coaxed, entwining like vines around her thoughts. She could feel their feral hunger, could sense the beckoning of the lost souls lingering just beyond the shadows. They wanted her to succumb, to accept her fate. "No," she screamed, summoning all her will. With one final push, she lunged forward, fingertips brushing the cold edge of light. The shadows shrieked, a sound filled with anguish, as they fought to hold her back. But she lunged again, a desperate movement fueled by maternal instinct. Light engulfed her, flooding her senses. Bright, painful white light. She gasped, half expecting the release to burn, but it didn't. It felt warm, safeguarding. Beneath her, the ground transformed from rough gravel to smooth wood, the chill of the basement fading into the background. Sarah rolled over and blinked against the brightness, breathless and wild-eyed. Was she free? "Mom." A familiar voice broke through the haze. Dread twisted in her gut. She turned, and there stood Jake, his face a mask of confusion and fear as he stood framed by the doorway. A quiver ran through her. "Jake, don't," she warned, urgency brimming in her voice. "You need to get back." But it was too late. The shadows began to shift, creeping along the edges of the light, fingers stretching towards her son. Panic gripped Sarah's heart as realization sank and there was no escape from the darkness. It would follow her, hunger thick in the air, weaving tales of despair and haunting every step. "Mom!" Jake cried, eyes wide, taken by confusion and something darker. The haunting laughter of Mr. Hargrove erupted again, echoing in the bright sanctuary. "You thought you could run?" he taunted, as the shadows narrowed, clutching at Jake's feet. "No," Sarah screamed, lunging toward him instinctively. An invisible barrier flickered like a mirage, just out of reach. With desperation clawing at her throat, she battled against the frantic whispers. "I won't let you take him. Not like this. Are you willing to pay the price, Sarah?" Mr. Hargrove echoed, his voice raw with excitement. In stories, sacrifices must be made. Her eyes darted from her son to the encroaching shadows, fear mixing with unshakable resolve. What price? What did it mean? "Jake!" she shouted one last time, heart racing as she made her choice. The darkness surged in, ready to consume, and she felt the tug of the narrative pull her in, testing her every nerve. Could she fight against her own story? Or would the tale end with them both lost? The answers lay further on, in twisted possibilities that awaited her in the shadows. Would she dare to discover them? The air around Sarah felt electric, charged with an intensity that struck her like a physical blow. The shadows tightened their grip around Jake, their tendrils black and slithery, glistening with malice as they inched upward, each flicker of movement threatening to steal away her son. "Get back, Jake! Please!" Sarah shouted, voice cracking as fear squeezed her throat. She could barely think straight, her heart pounding like a war drum. The barrier between her and her son cracked, a veil so fragile, she felt it could dissolve at any moment. "Mom, I don't understand." Jake's voice trembled, innocence laced with terror. The shadows slithered, dark whispers fuming in the air, clawing at her will. "No!" she screamed again, pushing against the glowing shield that separated them. Every desperate pulse of hope felt like a flickering candle in a storm. "You have to trust me." For the briefest moment, she thought she saw understanding in his wide eyes. But that glimmer faded as something deeper, darker, twisted behind his gaze. A shadow of recognition, a connection to the horrors lurking just beyond the light. "Let him go," Sarah shouted, fierce and raw, her voice echoing in the silence that followed. Mr. Hargrove chuckled again, the sound a slithering serpent. "Children are such easily manipulated beings, so full of dreams," he taunted, enjoying the game. "But nightmares now that's where true power lies." Shadows writhed like a living creature, ready to engulf her son entirely. In that moment, her heart shattered. "No, I want to lose him." Sarah surged forward, forcing herself to believe in her strength, even as the shadows gripped tighter, pulling at her resolve. "Pay the price, Sarah. Your story is tied to this one." Hargrove's words seeped into her mind, intoxicating her with dread. What could that price be? Would it be her life? Her freedom? Or perhaps one even more precious? With every ounce of energy left, she roared, "I will not let my story end like this." Sarah summoned every feeling of love and fury for her son, consolidating it into a single thought: she would fight back with every breath in her body. The shadows recoiled, their laughter turning into a wail. The light flickered dangerously as her focus sharpened, her vision shifting. Reality warped. She felt the ground beneath her shift again, the wood splintering as if the universe was breaking apart. "Mom!" Jake's voice shrilled again, and she felt a chill pierce through her resolve. The darkness whispered promises of despair, showing visions of her life twisted into horror. "I want to let you take him," she bellowed, piercing through the cacophony, battling with the shards of her conscience. Suddenly, the barrier shimmered, vibrating with energy as she thrust her hand toward it. It glowed, a surge of light leaning into the shadows, forcing them back, if only for a heartbeat. Jake moved. Now. But he didn't move. His gaze was fixated on something behind her, fingers twitching. She felt it too, a weight, lurking and waiting, a presence that feasted on fear. Sarah turned, and before her stood a figure emerging from the shadows, swirling like smoke. Dread pulled at the pit of her stomach, and her blood ran cold. It was a faceless silhouette too large, too grotesque, radiating an aura of deep hatred. "Doesn't he look familiar?" Hargrove hissed in delight, stepping back to make room. "I thought you'd recognize your old friend." In that instant, The memories hit her like shards of ice. The figure pushed against the thin stream of light, hungry, a reflection of every fear she ever faced. The monster was stalking her again, reaping revenge, and this time it was dragging Jake down with her. "Run!" Sarah screamed, panic giving voice to her despair, but she could see the fight draining from her son's eyes. The shadows were coaxing him, luring him into their depths. Fighting against the tide, she lunged toward Jake, stretching every muscle, but the moment felt like an eternity. In the distance, the laughter echoed, chilling her bones, resonating with the terror of darkness reclaiming its prize. "What sacrifice will you offer?" Hargrove whispered, a promise dancing in the dim reflections. Feeling the pull of desperation, Sarah realized she wouldn't have much time left. She needed a choice, and if she wanted to save Jake. The ground quaked beneath her feet, shadows threatening to reclaim both of them, urging her to decide. What was she willing to sacrifice? Would she pay the ultimate price? "Sarah, please," Jake's voice broke, and she felt the weight of the world pressing down on her. What horror awaited them both if she couldn't break free of this twisted fate? The answer slithered just out of reach, a long corridor of pain stretching before her. Would she turn away from her son, or embrace the darkness? Her heart raced, each thud amplifying the stakes that loomed ahead. The choice felt imminent. Would she dare confront the true monster lurking within? The shadows writhed and coiled, hungry for a taste of despair. Sarah's eyes darted between Jake and the dark figure looming behind him, a creature molded from every nightmare she had ever encountered. Her heart raced, each pulse a drumbeat echoing the urgency of the moment. "Think, Sarah, think," she whispered to herself, a mantra to stave off panic. The barriers of light fizzled as she felt the shadows sucking at her strength. She had always fought for her son. Now, it felt like the lines blurred between what she was willing to sacrifice and what would be taken from her. Jake's wide eyes mirrored the chaos around them, fear almost paralyzing him as if he were caught in some kind of spell. "Mom." His voice was a lifeline, delicate and shaking. "Stay strong, Jake. Please. I'm coming for you." But deep inside, Sarah feared what she might have to confront. The presence behind her whispered promises that felt too familiar, too taunting. "Join him, Sarah," that sinister whisper echoed. "Embrace the horror you've tried so hard to deny." The shadow crept closer, its dark form expanding, wanting to capture the light, to drench everything in suffocating terror. She could feel the chill of the past clawing at her, dragging her back to moments she had buried deep. Memories of running, visions of endless fear, they all felt too vivid now. "Jake," she cried, summoning whatever remaining strength she had. He hesitated, the darkness pulling at his feet. "What do I do? I don't trust me," she screamed, desperation warping her voice. "Just trust me." With those words, Sarah felt a surge of something inside her, a flicker of an old, familiar power, dormant until now. With a determined gaze, she focused on the wicked silhouette that had haunted her, lifting her chin defiantly. "You want to take my son?" The shadows flicked back for a moment, confusion rippling through the darkness. Hargrove's laughter froze mid-cackle, an eerie silence lingering as if the world itself was holding its breath. Sarah felt Jason's presence strong, like an anchor. "Keep pushing, Sarah," she whispered to herself, channeling every ounce of love she felt for Jake. The bubble of light around her surged, the darkness recoiling momentarily, and in that brief flicker, she got closer to her son. "Jake, I need you." His eyes flickered with hope, confusion still gnawing at him. "Mom, I'm scared." "I know, sweetheart. I am too," she admitted, allowing just a slight crack of vulnerability to seep through. "But we can do this together." As if energized by her words, Jake clenched his fists. "I'll try. I'll fight with you." But the shadow figure summoned its strength, splinters of darkness swirling fiercely, seeking to engulf them both. "A sacrifice, Sarah, for true power." Hargrove hissed from the edge of the shadows, taunting both mother and son. "Enough," she snapped. "I refuse to be a pawn in your game." With a single instinctual movement, Sarah lunged toward the darkness, throwing herself into the fray, hoping to distract it long enough for Jake to escape. In her heart, she knew the true test was ahead. But as she collided with the weight of the shadow, a sudden flash blinded her. The world erupted into chaos, colors and screams slicing through her reality. She felt the cold grip of despair claw at her, trying to pull her under. "Mom." Jake's voice echoed, a lifeline she couldn't quite grasp as the darkness threatened to drown them. Amidst the chaos, Sarah's thoughts turned feverish. What was she willing to sacrifice? Would it be her own essence? Her very soul? The darkness surged forward, teeth glinting like daggers. The final decision loomed. And then she understood. "Together, Jake. We fight together." But the shadows laughed, a sound that sent tremors through her bones. In that moment of clarity, she realized the shackles wouldn't let go until the ultimate battle raged on. Would the price be her son, or would it be something even more terrifying? As the pressure built and shadows twisted tighter, Sarah felt the darkness reaching for her. The choice was heavier, more significant than she had ever imagined. What power does one hold against the night when they are faced with the monstrous truth of their inner fears? And just like that, the darkness descended, leaving only flickering shadows dancing around them, a chilling whisper in the air. What will you sacrifice to save him? The air around Sarah crackled with a frenzied energy. The moment hung in a delicate balance. Darkness hovered, thick and heavy, pressing against her resolve. She could feel the fear rolling off Jake, his trembling frame ready to break under the weight of despair that seeped around them like an insidious fog. Sarah knew they were at the precipice of something monumental, something that would either liberate or imprison them forever. "Together, Jake." She locked eyes with her son, grounding herself in the warmth of that fierce love. She could shoulder any burden if it meant protecting him. The shadows recoiled momentarily, sensing their shared strength. Sarah seized the moment, a rush of adrenaline coursing through her, as if igniting old fires still smoldering within her spirit. "We can do this," she urged, her voice steady now, sharper than ever, slicing through the fog of fear. "No more stories," she bellowed, directing her challenge to the darkness. "No more games." Her words echoed, a declaration against the nightmares that had shadowed their lives. Mr. Hargrove's laughter resonated through the swirling shadows, but it lacked the confidence of before. "You think you can reverse fate?" he hissed, the teasing tone twisting into something angry. "You are too late to change your narrative, Sarah." A deep-seated fear clawed at her stomach, but in the face of hopelessness, Sarah felt clarity wash over her. The stories could not claim her son. She was the author of her own fate now, and she would fight for her narrative to be one of victory. "Listen to me, Jake," she said, her voice low but fierce. "You have to trust that our love is stronger. The moment we combine our strength, the darkness won't stand a chance." The shadows inhaled around them, swirling tighter, feeling the intensity of their bond. But Sarah refused to back down. Instead, she willed her love into a shimmering light, pushing her heart forward, igniting hope and courage she had buried deep. Jake's trembling hand found hers, and she felt him grasp it tight. "I'm not scared anymore, Mom," he echoed, his young voice ringing true like a beacon in the dark. "Let us beat this." And like that, they began to rise, the light illuminating the space around them despite the shadows closing in. They shared an unbreakable bond. Love, courage, and hope surged through them, forming a barrier the dark couldn't penetrate. Together now, they chanted, a pulse of energy synchronizing with each heartbeat. The shadows writhed and recoiled, thrashing against their rising brightness, driving Mr. Hargrove backward, his form blurring as he struggled to maintain his hold. "No," he shouted, the malevolence in his voice punctured by fear. "You're nothing but whispers, mere fragments of the tales." But Sarah felt them solidify. "No, we are the light in the story," she proclaimed. "We are the living truth, not just tales." With each parallel heartbeat, the darkness thinned, but Sarah felt the pressure creeping closer, toothy shadows gnashing. Closing her eyes, she summoned every painful moment, every fear she defaced, and wove it into a tapestry of strength. She could hear the distant echoes of torment from those trapped in the dark, and within that sorrow, she found purpose aflame against the oppressive cold. As if sensing the impending change, the shadows swelled violently, rushing at them in a vortex of chaos that sought to reclaim its power. "I will never let you go," Hargrove howled, his form manifesting somewhere near, thrumming with darkness. But Sarah was ready. With a fierce resolve, she dug her feet into the floor, roots weaving into the very fabric of dawn that she summoned together with Jake. "This ends now," she declared, their voices merging, a harmonious cry of resolve that transcended despair. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from their hands, illuminating the basement with a warmth that banished the weight of the shadows. The light battled fiercely against the darkness, pushing it back. The tendrils hissed and shrieked, but for every cry, their light grew stronger, brighter. "Stay with me, Jake," Sarah shouted, because this moment demanded the power of their unity. She felt him squeezing her hand, bright-eyed and resolute. In that blinding moment, all the fear, the doubts, and the shadows faded into nothingness. The last whispers of darkness shattered like glass, and in its place, dawn overtook the basement. Sunlight streamed in, washing away the creaking old darkness, laying bare the truth of their lives, filled with possibility. "Mom, we did it!" Jake exclaimed, bouncing with exuberance, joy flooding his voice. "Yes." Sarah pulled him close, enveloping him in her embrace. Tears streamed down her cheeks, a cathartic release, joy and relief crashing through her. They had stood together against the monsters of their story and emerged victorious. But in that moment of celebration, she felt a chilling breeze brush past her, leaving a shiver down her spine. The echoes of whispering voices chirped at the edges of her consciousness, the stories still lurking. "Are we really free?" she half-whispered, the lingering dread uncertainly grounding across her heart. "Maybe," Jake replied, looking upwards where twilight dove into full bloom. "But we can face whatever comes next together, right?" "Yes." With eyes set on the light above, she felt empowered. Their journey had transformed them, awakened resilience that would never be extinguished. They weathered the storm, becoming their own narratives from that day forward. Together they faced the sun, a shimmering future sprawled before them, free from darkness, the story only beginning. But first, they needed to share this victory, to raise a voice against the shadows that threatened others. And as they stepped into the light, Sarah vowed a new chapter, a promise to speak of bravery against despair, to illuminate paths for those lost in the darkness. As they exited the basement into the dawn, a specific understanding flickered in her heart. The tales twisted in shadows would always stir, lurking in forgotten corners. But now they held the light, and they would never stop shining. Now, if you're feeling the same fire inside you that Sarah and Jake have, there's something you need to do: subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm with your support. And flood the comments section with your reactions, thoughts, and theories about this ending. We want to hear from you. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans know the power of supporting this channel, and your actions mean everything.